She sends a love letter to the wrong number. The CEO replies and falls madly in love. She didn't mean to send the love letter to a billionaire, but once he read it, he couldn't stop thinking about her. Amelia just wanted to get something off her chest. A simple message, sent in the middle of the night, to an old number, meant for a love that never happened. But one wrong digit changed everything. Across the city, high up in a glass-walled tower, the coldest and most powerful man in the country received that confession by mistake, and for some reason, it was the first thing in years that made him feel human again. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now let's get back to the story. It was 2:37 a.m. when Amelia hit send, a single act of vulnerability wrapped in a trembling fingertip. The message wasn't meant to reach anyone of importance, just a digital bottle tossed into the sea of numbers on her cracked phone. But fate, mischievous and wide awake, had other plans. The message read, "You probably don't even remember me, but I loved you, quietly, the kind of love that aches in silence. I never said anything, but maybe in another life. You might have loved me too. I just needed to say it somewhere." She intended to send it to Luca, the boy she used to sketch in her notebooks back in high school. Her unreachable daydream, now just a memory that lingered on her chest like a ghost she couldn't shake. But sleep and wine made a terrible team, and her fingers slipped. One wrong digit, one small mistake. Miles away, in a glass-walled penthouse that kissed the skyline of São Paulo, Julian Rivas, 32, billionaire tech CEO, cold as quartz to the world, was still working as always. His office was the only light still burning in the tower. He was reviewing acquisition reports when his personal phone buzzed, an unknown number. He usually ignored them, but something made him check. The message felt like it wasn't meant for him, and that made him read it twice. Julian frowned, then read it again. The words, they weren't business. They weren't spam. They were raw, real, beautiful in a way he hadn't felt in years, if ever. Someone out there had just poured their soul into a stranger's inbox. His inbox. His first instinct was to delete it, move on. But something tightened in his chest. He sat back in his chair, fingers hovering over the screen. Then, like a man walking into water just to see how deep it is, he replied, "I don't think this was meant for me, but thank you for writing it anyway." The next morning, Amelia stared at her phone in horror. Unknown. "I don't think this was meant for me, but thank you for writing it anyway." Her heart sank. She clapped her hand to her mouth like she could stuff the mistake back in. "Oh no, 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 no," she whispered, pacing the small studio apartment above her aunt's flower shop. The city buzzed below, indifferent to her personal disaster. But then, something made her stop. The reply wasn't mocking, wasn't creepy. It was kind, simple, honest. She tapped a reply before she could overthink it. "You're right, sorry, it wasn't. But thanks for not laughing." Julian was in a boardroom when her message lit up the corner of his phone. He should have ignored it, but his mind wandered. This girl, whoever she was, didn't ask for anything. No photos, no flirting, no money. Just a moment of truth that she thought no one would ever read. He replied again, "I didn't laugh. I couldn't. You wrote something real." That's how it started. Two strangers, two entirely different worlds, connected by a misdialed confession. They didn't exchange names at first, just late-night words, one message at a time. Amelia told him little pieces of her life. How she worked at a plant nursery, how she hadn't dated in forever, how sometimes she felt invisible in the city's blur. She didn't tell him about her father walking out, or the way her mom's death left her holding more than grief. That came later. Julian, on the other hand, never talked about his company or the weight of his empire. Instead, he sent her old poetry he remembered from school, or photos of the view from his rooftop at night, always making sure his face wasn't in the reflection. They didn't ask questions they weren't ready to answer. It was safer that way. But something was growing. like a seed pushing through the cracks of two very different sidewalks. One night, as rain tapped against Amelia's window, she sent him this. "Isn't it strange how you can feel close to someone just by words, even if you don't know who they really are?" He replied, "Maybe words are who we really are. Everything else just gets in the way." Then came the night that changed everything. Julian had just returned from a disastrous gala, a string of fake smiles, shallow conversation, women who only saw the numbers behind his name. He felt hollow, exhausted. So, he messaged her. "I had the kind of night that makes you question if anyone really sees you, not just the suit, or the job, or the car. Just you." Amelia, reading in bed in her oversized hoodie, sat up slowly. "I know that feeling, but I see you. At least the part of you you've shown me, and I think it's beautiful." Julian stared at that message longer than he should have. For the first time in years, someone said they saw him, and they didn't even know his name. He hesitated, then typed, "I want to see you too." Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" Julian replied. "In person." Amelia stared at her screen, heart pounding in her chest. The words glowed back at her like a flare shot into the night. In person. She didn't even know his name. He didn't know hers. Their entire connection had lived in late-night text bubbles and borrowed vulnerability. Meeting meant crossing a line, tearing down the walls that kept their conversation safe. But deep down, a part of her wanted to say yes. "What if I'm not who you think I am?" she typed. There was a pause. 1 minute. Then 2. She watched the little typing dots flicker and disappear. Then his reply came. "Neither am I. But maybe we're both closer to our real selves with each other than we've ever been with anyone else." She swallowed hard, the words hitting deeper than she expected. "Okay," she wrote, heart in her throat, "but somewhere public. And just coffee. For now." The next morning, Julian stood before his closet, more uncertain than he'd been before any investor pitch or IPO meeting. He was a man used to custom-tailored suits, pristine shoes, crisp perfection. But for this, none of it felt right. He settled on something simple. Dark jeans, a soft gray sweater. It felt like stepping out of character. And somehow, that felt good. He checked his reflection and realized for the first time in a long while, he wasn't dressing to impress. He was dressing to be known. Amelia wore her favorite dress, soft blue, flowy with tiny embroidered daisies. It was a dress her mom once called her sunshine armor. She paired it with white sneakers because anything else would feel like pretending. They agreed to meet at a quiet cafe tucked into a leafy corner near Ibirapuera Park, a place Amelia loved, a place Julian had never noticed, despite passing it 100 times. She arrived first, nerves fluttering like hummingbirds in her chest. Every time the bell above the door chimed, she looked up. Then he walked in, and everything stopped. He was beautiful. Not movie star beautiful, something quieter, deeper. There was a gravity to him. Dark eyes, thoughtful, hair that looked like it always resisted perfection. And when his gaze met hers, it was as if the entire room exhaled. Julian knew it was her instantly, the way her eyes scanned the room, hopeful but guarded. The nervous smile she tried to hide. She was beautiful, not in a polished, filtered way, but like a sunrise you didn't expect. They both stood there for a second, unsure who should move first. Then Julian walked over and said softly, "Hi." Amelia smiled. "Hi." They sat. Two strangers with 1,000 shared secrets. The conversation flowed easier than either expected. They talked about music, the kind of movies they loved, favorite childhood snacks. Nothing deep at first, just warm layers peeling away slowly. Julian told her he worked in tech. Mostly boring stuff, he said with a grin, carefully sidestepping his real identity. Amelia didn't push. She wasn't there for status. She was there for whatever this strange, tender thing between them was becoming. She told him about the flower shop, about living above it and waking every morning to the scent of lilies and soil, how sometimes she missed her mom so much it ached, but the garden made her feel closer to her. He listened, really listened. Then he said something that made her blink back tears. "I think people like you are what keep cities like this from going cold." She couldn't reply to that, so she smiled and looked away, biting her lip. They spent 2 hours there. Then 3. The world outside kept moving, but their little bubble didn't pop. When it was time to go, Julian offered to walk her home. They strolled slowly through the late afternoon light, the sun draping gold over the sidewalks. As they passed a vendor selling roses, Julian stopped, looked at her for a moment, and bought a single white rose. No grand gestures, just handed it to her without a word. She took it, quietly, brushing her cheek against the petals. As they reached the flower shop, Emilia turned to him. "I still don't know your name." He hesitated, then gave a soft smile. "Julian." She nodded. "I'm Emilia." They stood in silence, something crackling between them. A question neither knew how to ask. Then she leaned up gently and kissed him on the cheek, a touch barely there. "Good night, Julian." He watched her disappear behind the shop door, and for the first time in years, Julian Rivas didn't want to go back to the penthouse. He just wanted to stay in front of a flower shop where a girl in a daisy blue dress had made his world feel less empty. But not all beautiful stories are left uninterrupted. The next morning, Julian walked into a meeting with his board. He was still smiling, still carrying the warmth of Emilia in his chest. Then his assistant whispered, "There's a piece running online this morning. They found out about your night at the cafe. Someone recognized you. Photos leaked." Julian's smile vanished. He opened his phone. There it was. A blurry photo of him, handing a rose to a girl in a blue dress. The caption screamed, "Mystery girl melts Brazil's ICE CEO. Who is she?" His stomach dropped. They were coming for her. Emilia's phone buzzed before sunrise. Still half asleep, she rolled over and blinked at the screen. 13 missed calls, 27 messages, all from numbers she didn't recognize. Her heart thudded. She sat up confused, then opened one of the texts. "Is it true? You and Julian Rivas? OMG, you're famous. Julian Rivas." She froze. No one was supposed to know. Her fingers trembled as she tapped open her browser, and there it was, the photo. Him, her, the rose. The quiet little cafe that felt like a dream just yesterday, now splashed across gossip blogs, social media, even a major business site with the headline, "Julian Rivas finally falls? Mystery woman steals the Ice King's heart." She stared at her own face, caught mid-laugh, frozen forever in the internet's ruthless memory. "Julian," she whispered, more to herself than to the room. Julian was already pacing when his driver pulled up to the flower shop that morning. He hadn't called. He didn't want to scare her. But he couldn't stay away. Not when the world had burst their bubble overnight. As he stepped out, he saw her standing behind the glass, talking to her aunt, her face pale and full of disbelief. When Emilia turned and saw him through the window, something in her expression shifted. Fear? Anger? Hurt? He pushed the door open, and the familiar scent of eucalyptus and jasmine greeted him, but this time it couldn't soften what had changed. "Emilia," he said gently. She didn't answer right away, just folded her arms across her chest and looked at him like she didn't know who he was anymore. "You said you worked in tech," she said, voice low. "You didn't say you were Julian Rivas." "I know," he admitted. "I should have told you. I was going to. I just didn't want it to change the way you saw me." She blinked hard. "And now the world sees me, with you." "I'm so sorry," he said, taking a step closer. "This wasn't planned. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even notice someone was taking pictures. I swear." Emilia wanted to believe him. A part of her did. But the other part, the part that had finally let someone in, that had believed this could be something quiet and safe, that part was scared. "You don't understand what this means," she whispered. "You'll be fine. You're used to this. But me? I'm just me." "You're not just anything, Amelia," Julian said gently. "You're the first real thing in my life in years." The words landed with weight, but she shook her head. "I need time." He nodded. "Take all you need. Just don't shut the door." Then he left, the bell over the door jingling softly behind him, the sound of something fragile cracking. By the next day, her phone still hadn't stopped buzzing. Influencers were tagging her. Bloggers were hunting for her old photos. Her followers ballooned overnight. A few girls from school even messaged her like they were best friends. But most of it was noise. White-hot, invasive, empty noise. Julian hadn't messaged since their conversation, and though her heart ached, she didn't reach out either. Until Tuesday night. That's when she saw it. A video, posted by someone from the cafe. Grainy footage of Julian handing her the rose, followed by a clip of them laughing, leaning close. The caption? "So this is what makes the Ice King melt. She's cute, I guess." The comments were worse. "Bet she's after his money. She looks like she works in a bakery or something, lol. Give it 2 weeks, she's not his type." Emilia's chest tightened. It wasn't the fame. It was the way people peeled her open like she was fiction. Someone to judge, to measure, to reduce. She closed her laptop and sat in the dark, the glow of the screen still haunting her face. She almost didn't hear the knock on the door. But she opened it anyway, and there he was, Julian. Soaked from the rain, holding a bag of takeout in one hand and a daisy in the other. "I know I said I'd wait," he said, "but I couldn't. I saw the video." She stepped back. Let him in. He sat the food down and looked at her. Really looked. "I know this is hard," he said quietly. "And I hate what this has done to your peace. But if you want me to disappear, say the word. I'll do it. I just needed you to know I don't regret any of it." She stared at him for a long beat. Then she asked, "Why me?" His answer came without hesitation. "Because you made me feel like a person, not a product." That broke something in her, not in a bad way, but in the way a locked door finally gives in. She stepped toward him. "You made me feel seen." They stood there, inches apart. Then she whispered, "I don't want to give this up, but I don't know how to live in your world." He reached for her hand, fingers gentle. "Then don't," he said. "Let me learn to live in yours." That night, they didn't kiss, didn't rush anything. They just sat on the floor of her tiny apartment, eating noodles from paper boxes, her head resting on his shoulder. Outside, the world still buzzed with noise, but inside, for a little while, there was peace. The next morning, Emilia's aunt handed her an envelope. "No return address," she said, raising an eyebrow. "Dropped off by courier." Emilia opened it slowly. Inside was a single page, handwritten, neat, elegant. "If you think you can hide from the past, Emilia, you're wrong. Some things don't stay buried forever. No signature, no name, just a date. And it was tomorrow." Emilia read the letter 3 times before the words made sense. Not because the handwriting was unclear, but because her mind refused to accept what it was seeing. "If you think you can hide from the past, Emilia, you're wrong. Some things don't stay buried forever. No signature, no hint of who sent it, no hint of who, just a date. Tomorrow's date." She sat on the edge of her bed, clutching the paper so tightly her knuckles went white. Her heart pounded not with fear, but with recognition. Someone knew something. Something she had tried to forget. When she was 17, there was a boy named Caio. Not a boyfriend, not even quite a friend. Just a storm in a hoodie. Angry, charming, dangerous in a way that felt thrilling to a girl who was grieving and angry herself. For a few months, they were inseparable, riding the subway until the last stop, breaking into construction sites to scream under the stars, swapping secrets too heavy for daylight. Then one night, something went wrong. A fight, shouts, glass breaking, a store window shattered. And Amelia, terrified and unsure, ran before the police arrived. She never saw Caio again. She never told anyone she'd been there. It wasn't the kind of mistake that ruined a life, but it was enough to make her bury that chapter deep, under years of petals and soft-spoken days. And now it had clawed its way back. Julian knew something was wrong the moment he saw her. She was pale, distracted, her usual smile flickering like a faulty light. They met again at the cafe. She hadn't told him about the letter yet. "Everything okay?" he asked gently, fingers brushing hers across the table. She hesitated, then slid the envelope toward him. He read it silently, his jaw tightening. When he looked up, his eyes weren't just concerned. They were protective. "Do you know who sent this?" he asked. She nodded once. "Barely. Maybe. I'm not sure. It's someone from before." Julian didn't press, but he leaned forward, eyes steady. "Whatever it is, you're not alone anymore." And for the first time, she let herself believe that might be true. The next day arrived with heavy skies, as if the world itself held its breath. Amelia spent the morning rearranging succulents in the shop, pretending the letter didn't exist, but her eyes kept darting to the clock. When the bell over the door finally chimed, she turned, expecting a customer. But it wasn't. It was him. Older now. Hair shorter, eyes harder, but it was him, Caio. He walked in like no time had passed, like he belonged there. And for a second, Amelia couldn't breathe. "Long time," he said, hands in his pockets. "Nice place. Flowers suit you." She didn't speak, just stared. Caio tilted his head. "I didn't come to cause trouble." "Then why send that?" she asked, voice low. He gave a shrug that masked something deeper. "I didn't know how else to get you to talk to me." Julian stood behind the counter, unseen by Caio. He had come in through the back, bringing her lunch. But now his entire body stilled, eyes locked on hers, waiting for a signal. Amelia glanced at him once, a silent, "Don't." Then back to Caio. "What do you want?" she asked. He looked down. When he spoke, his voice wasn't cruel. It was cracked. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." That caught her off guard. "For what?" "For letting you take the blame in my head all these years," he said. "You ran that night, and I told myself you were weak, but I was the one who left you there. I never got caught, Amelia. I got clean, got boring, and still, I think about it." She didn't know what to say. 1,000 things rose to her lips. Accusations, confessions, old teenage rage, but none of them felt right anymore, so she just nodded. "I forgive you," she said softly. "I forgave you a long time ago." Caio looked like he might cry, but he just smiled instead. "You turned out okay?" he said. She smiled back, almost laughing, still figuring it out. Then he left. No drama, no chaos, just a door closing. For good. That night Julian and Amelia sat on the rooftop above the flower shop, legs dangling over the edge, sharing a blanket. He had listened to her tell the full story, every detail, and when she finished, he just reached for her hand. "I don't care who you were," he said, "only who you are." She leaned into him. "And who am I?" He looked at her like he'd already known the answer forever. "Someone brave enough to love quietly, and strong enough to be loud when it matters." She kissed him, softly, finally, and the world didn't fall apart. It bloomed. But outside the shop, parked across the street, sat a sleek black car. Inside, a woman with red lips and cold eyes watched through tinted glass. She held a photo in her hand, Julian and Amelia, smiling, kissing. She tapped her fingers once, then made a call. "Yeah, it's her. Let's move." The next morning dawned quiet and warm, as if the storm of the past few days had finally passed. Amelia awoke with sunlight pouring through the sheer curtains, and for the first time in what felt like forever, her chest didn't feel heavy. Julian had stayed the night, Not in her bed, but on the couch downstairs, wrapped in a quilt and surrounded by the scent of rosemary and orchids. He made her coffee. He kissed her forehead. He smiled like a man who was finally exactly where he wanted to be, but the peace wasn't built to last. Not when someone was watching. Her name was Verena Arantes, and in every magazine that mattered, she was Julian Rivas's on-again, off-again flame. Fashion mogul, heiress, ruthless and beautiful. With a smile that cost more than most people's yearly rent. She hadn't cared about Julian in months. Not until he stopped caring about her. But now she was watching his name climb through trending lists. This time linked not to an IPO or a luxury product, but to a girl in sneakers who sold succulents. And Verena wasn't the kind of woman who liked being replaced. Especially not publicly. Especially not by nobody. Julian had just left Emilia's apartment when Verena showed up at the flower shop, unannounced, dressed in crisp white and oversized sunglasses, a presence too sharp for a place so soft. Emilia was watering violets near the window when the door opened. She turned with a warm smile, one that froze mid-air the second she saw the woman's expression. "Can I help you?" Emilia asked carefully. Verena didn't return the smile. She looked around the store with the thin-lipped precision of someone appraising a thrift shop. "I'm here to warn you," she said, not even bothering with small talk. Emilia blinked. "Excuse me?" Verena removed her sunglasses and met Emilia's eyes with a gaze like ice through glass. "Julian's not like you, and you're not like me. He doesn't belong in this world, and you don't belong in his. This, whatever this is, it's cute, but it's temporary." Emilia's breath caught in her throat, but she stood up straighter. "If you came here to intimidate me, you might want to try again when I haven't already buried bigger demons." Verena smirked, clearly amused. "Sweetheart, I'm not here to scare you. I'm here to give you a chance to walk away before you get hurt." "I'm not afraid of you," Emilia said quietly. "You should be afraid of what comes with him." And with that, Verena slipped her sunglasses back on and walked out, heels clicking like punctuation. Julian heard about the visit before Emilia even had to tell him. His assistant had called to warn him that Verena was stirring up press again. He rushed back to the flower shop, heart racing. "I'm so sorry," he said as soon as he saw Emilia. "She's complicated. She's not over being the center of attention, and she hates being left." Emilia leaned against the counter, arms crossed, but her voice was calm. "She said I don't belong in your world." Julian stepped closer. "She's wrong." "Is she?" Emilia asked. "Look around, Julian. This is my world. Plants, dust, small joys. You live in penthouses and private jets, and I'm still learning how to use a dishwasher from 1994. He reached for her hand. "I don't care about any of that. I care about you. With you I feel human again, like my life has color." Emilia held his gaze, her walls up, but cracked. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I am too," he said. And that was the truth neither of them had said out loud until now. But the media storm wasn't done with them. That night photos leaked. Old ones. Emilia, younger, angrier, standing beside Caio at a protest that had turned chaotic. Nothing criminal, nothing illegal, but enough to raise eyebrows, enough to stir rumors. The headline said it all. "Julian Rivas's new girlfriend has a dark past?" Emilia read it with shaking hands. Julian called her seconds later. "Don't read the comments," he said. "It's already being taken down. I have a legal team on it." But she wasn't crying. She wasn't panicking. She was quiet. "They're going to keep digging, Julian," she said. "You've lived your whole life under glass. I haven't. I've made mistakes, and now they're going to make me into someone I'm not." "They don't matter," he said firmly. "They do when they decide who I am before I even open my mouth." Julian didn't have an answer for that, because she was right. The next day, Emilia didn't open the shop. She sat in the back room, surrounded by wilting lilies, wondering if she was strong enough for a love like this. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Julian. Just a photo of his childhood home, a tiny, humble place in the countryside. Cracks in the walls, wildflowers in the yard. "This is where I started," he wrote. "I've built a lot. I've lost more. But what I want most now is something that feels like home. And you do." Tears filled her eyes. She didn't reply with words. She walked out the door, through the crowded street, and straight to his building. And when he opened the door, she just said, "I don't care how loud the world gets. I choose you." But in a hotel suite across town, Verena sipped wine and watched the news with narrowed eyes. She wasn't finished. And the next move wouldn't be a warning. It would be a war. The morning after Amelia walked back into Julian's arms, the world should have been brighter. But instead, it was louder. Paparazzi staked out the sidewalk in front of her flower shop like wolves around a campfire. Cameras flashed the moment she stepped outside to unlock the gate. A reporter even tried to hand her a mic. "Amelia! Amelia! Is it true you were involved in a criminal riot at 17? Is Julian Rivas dating a liar? Are you using him to launch your own brand?" She didn't say a word, just turned, locked the gate again, and went back upstairs, her hands shaking, throat tight, face burning. From the window above, she watched them swarm like ants. And it hit her. They weren't going to stop. Not because of Julian's lawyers, not because she said nothing. They were going to keep twisting her life into headlines until there was nothing left of her quiet, beautiful world. Julian arrived 30 minutes later. He brought breakfast and a plan. "I hired a private team, ex-military, some of the best in media protection. We'll keep them back. I'll get you out of here for a few days. Let them cool down. We can go to my beach house in Ilabella." "No," Amelia said softly. He blinked. "No." She stood in the doorway, arms folded across her chest, hair still damp from a shower she didn't enjoy. "I don't want to hide, Julian. That's not who I am." His shoulders dropped with quiet admiration. "Then what do you want to do?" She took a breath. "I want to speak." That afternoon, Amelia posted a video. Just her. No makeup, no filters, no lights. Her phone balanced on a stack of books, a houseplant hanging lazily behind her like an unbothered witness. She looked straight into the lens and said, "Hi, my name is Amelia Moranos. Some of you know me now as the girl dating Julian Rivas. Some of you think I'm a lie, or a scandal, or a threat to his image. So I want to tell you who I really am." And she did. She talked about her childhood, her mother's death, her love for small things, the mistakes she made, the boy she once followed into a fire, and the woman she became when she walked away from it. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just told the truth. By midnight, the video had over 1 million views. Julian watched it alone in his penthouse, jaw tight, eyes glassy. She didn't mention his name once, but every word was about him, or rather, about why she still chose him, even when it would have been easier to walk away. He called her that night, told her he'd never been more proud of anyone. Then he said, "Come with me this weekend, one night away. No press, no cameras, just us." And she said yes. Ilabella was a quiet dream. His beach house wasn't flashy, all wood and windows and wind chimes. It was the kind of place where you could hear yourself breathe, where laughter didn't echo, it just settled into the sand. They swam. They cooked dinner together barefoot. They danced in the living room with the radio humming some old bossa nova tune neither of them knew the words to. It felt like how love should feel. Soft, real, earned. That night, under a ceiling of stars, Julian touched her face and said, "I love you." She smiled, no fear left in her eyes. "I know." But across the water, trouble was catching up. Verena's final play wasn't gossip, it was corporate. She'd been quietly acquiring shares in Julian's company, not enough to take control, but enough to cause chaos, enough to get inside the boardroom. And that's exactly where she went. Monday morning, dressed in blood-red silk and a victory smile, she dropped a stack of files onto the mahogany table. "Personal misconduct," she said, "leaked financials, and the company's public image is drowning." One of the executives cleared his throat. "You're suggesting he steps down?" Verena folded her arms. "I'm saying if you don't remove him, your stockholders might." Julian got the call before lunch. His legal advisor's voice was strained. "They want a vote, Julian, tomorrow. They're calling it a reputation review, but you know what that means." Julian stared out his office window, the skyline reflecting his silence. He'd built the company from his college dorm room, but now he might lose it. Not because of failure, because of love. When Amelia arrived at his building that night, the guard didn't smile like usual. She took the elevator up in silence. When she opened the door, Julian was already packing. "Where are you going?" she asked, alarmed. He looked up, tired. "They're pushing for a vote to remove me as CEO." Her breath caught. "Because of me?" "No," he said, "because I stopped playing their game." She stepped forward. "Then fight. I don't know if I can win." She cupped his face. "Since when do you care about winning more than doing what's right?" He blinked at her, stunned by how much strength she carried in so small a body. And he knew. He didn't just love her. He needed her. The next morning, the board gathered. Verena arrived early, confident. Julian walked in alone. But just before the vote began, the doors opened again, and in walked Amelia. Not in designer heels, not with security, but with a file in her hand. "I believe the board should see this," she said. Verena's smile vanished as Amelia placed a report on the table, a timeline of Verena's share buys, including proof that she leaked private footage to damage Julian's standing, a violation of internal code, a betrayal. The room went silent, and then, one by one, heads turned, not toward Julian, toward Amelia. The boardroom had never been so quiet. Amelia stood at the head of the table, her back straight, fingers slightly trembling as she placed the file before the directors. Verena sat across the room, her face unreadable, though her perfectly polished nails began to tap a little faster on the mahogany surface. "This report contains evidence of unethical stock manipulation and media leaks," Amelia said, her voice steady but human, "all tied to Verena Arantes. She used her influence not to protect this company but to punish Julian for choosing me." A silence dropped over the table like a curtain. One of the senior board members, a gray-haired man named Afonso, flipped through the file. "This is detailed," he muttered. "And verified?" "Yes," Julian said, finally stepping forward. "I didn't ask her to do this. She did it because it was the right thing." His eyes flicked to Amelia, and in them lived something no title could buy: trust. Afonso looked up. "Then I suggest the vote shift direction, not to remove Julian Rivas, but to remove Miss Arantes from any further influence over this board." The nods were slow at first, then decisive. Verena stood, calm but wounded. "You think this changes anything? The public won't forget her past." Julian stepped beside Amelia. "No, but they'll remember who stood beside her." Verena didn't respond. She didn't have to. She just left the room, red heels echoing like a closing chapter. And with that, the war was over. 2 weeks later, the headlines told a different story. Julian Rivas remains CEO, credits his girlfriend with saving his career. Emilia Maraños, the girl who stood tall in the storm. And then, quietly beneath the noise, life began to soften again. The reporters left the sidewalk. The viral wave passed. And for the first time in months, Emilia's flower shop bloomed without flashes going off outside. She reopened the store. She replanted what had wilted, and when customers asked for that girl from the internet, she simply smiled and said, Just Amelia's fine. Julian came by almost every afternoon now. Not in suits, not in a rush. Sometimes with new books, sometimes with lunch, sometimes just to sit and read while she arranged lilies in the back. Their lives, once so far apart, now moved in rhythm. One morning, he showed up early. Too early. "Why are you here at 7 a.m.?" Amelia asked, still in pajamas. He held up 2 plane tickets. "Because we need to go somewhere." "Where?" "Back to where this all started." They flew to a tiny beach town on the coast, not Ilhabela this time, but a quiet village where Amelia used to visit with her mom. Julian booked a small cottage, no staff, no paparazzi, just them. One evening they walked the shore barefoot, the tide brushing their ankles, stars blinking to life above them like old friends returning. Julian stopped. "I never told you something," he said. Amelia looked at him, curious. "The night you sent that message, I was going to quit everything." She blinked. "Quit?" "I felt empty. I didn't see a future where I wasn't just a name and a net worth. I had no one to talk to, no one who knew me without wanting something." He reached into his pockets and pulled out her letter, the one she accidentally sent, crumpled, printed, but whole. "I printed it. I don't know why. I just couldn't delete it. Something about your words." He took her hand. "They reminded me I still had a heart." Her eyes filled. "I was just screaming into the dark," she whispered, "and I was the one who heard you." Then slowly he knelt in the sand, not flashy, not dramatic, just real, a velvet box, a simple, elegant ring. "I don't need more noise. I just want you. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled from her eyes as she dropped to her knees too, wrapping her arms around him before she could even say yes. But she whispered it against his neck. "Of course I will." They didn't rush the wedding, didn't sell the story to magazines. They married 6 months later in a garden behind the flower shop, under strings of warm lights and wild blooms that Amelia arranged herself. Julian wore no tie. Amelia wore daisies in her hair. It was imperfect and perfect. And somewhere in the crowd, as the music played and laughter floated into the night air, someone cried. Not from sadness, but from remembering that love, when it's real, doesn't care where you come from or what you've survived. It just finds you, even if you send it to the wrong number. And in the end, they turned a message meant for someone else into a life built for each other. Not because fate forced it, but because when life offered them a second chance, they said yes. The end. We've all sent words we wished we could take back, or stayed silent when we should have spoken. But sometimes, even a mistake can become the first page of something beautiful. So let me ask you this. If you could send a letter to one person, no names, no expectations, just honesty, what would you say? Drop it in the comments. You never know who might be listening.